Everyone. Don, how we doing? Can't hear you.
There.
There
Can you hear
you
me
are.
now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 people here so far. The people are coming in, so I'm checking
Okay.
them off everyone comes in. So I think I'm pretty up to date.
Great.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have a pretty brief meeting. We will try to use people's time wisely and efficiently, as we always do. Let's just jump right in. The minutes from last meeting, any comments on them? If not, we'll take a motion and
I do have one change or a couple changes there, Dave. I noticed that I had Chris Van Mosner and Matt Stinchcom as present at the last meeting, but they were not, so I just crossed them off
okay,
the list.
great. With that in mind, any additional comments, corrections? If not, a motion and a second to adopt them, please.
I move to adopt.
Thank you, Betsy.
I second.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, great. So any opposed? Great. Minutes are adopted. So we have some still outstanding nominations. They're listed up on the in the agenda. So if your name is on there, we don't need to talk about it. Just pester your folks and try to get that done.
Yep.
It doesn't really, it's whether you can come to the meeting or not, obviously, or anything else. But just trying to dot our I's, cross our T's. Don?
Yeah, I believe both Jen and Sam are on track to get, in process. The other two, Matt Stinchcom and Chris Van Mosner, I have not heard back, so I'm not sure what's going on with those two, but they may just kind of fall off the membership list.
Okay.
We don't hear back from them soon.
I'll reach out to Matt, see what's going on with him.
Mhm.
Try to cajole him. I know our meetings of late have been not full of active projects, and I don't want to lose momentum and lose participation, because once we start the CAP project, I think it will get more interesting again and more active. So we're also talking about this countywide climate meeting that we want folks to engage in. But let's jump in. What's the update on the CAP, Don?
Well, I do have some information I want to share with everybody on the CAP. So we have the signed contract with DEC. That's all complete. We've met with Marissa Hogenkamp from purchasing and working on the RFP. Just kind of buttoning that up. Excuse me. Let's see. So one of the county attorneys is going to develop a draft contract for our potential consultant, because DEC usually wants to see that contract along with the RFP. We're talking about having a CAT committee meeting just to bring everyone else up to speed on that. So, before we send it out, just get any last minute input, because the CAP committee is probably going to have to do some evaluation of the responses that we get back in. And we just want to make sure everyone's familiar with how we have laid out the scoring process for that.
Quick question. You're talking about the CAP committee reviewing the RFP that has been edited since we've seen it last.
Yes. Just so everyone's familiar with what's in it, and especially on the scoring criteria, because when we get the responses back, we're going to have to go through that scoring criteria and kind of, apply scores to all the responses and pick out our preferred consultant.
Right.
To hire. Okay.
And is there an opportunity sorry, quick question. Is there an opportunity for feedback on that? We don't want to slow things down further, and hopefully we don't have any significant feedback or anything at all.
Yeah, I think that's what we would like would like to get is some feedback, maybe from the
Okay.
CAT committee on, and that actually, even discussing the whole process. So, because one of the things that came up with Marissa when we were looking at RFP, how are we going to score it? Are we just going to like all the CAT committee members going to meet all at once and review everything in bulk, or are we going to sort of dole out, different pieces to evaluate and score and then combine them afterwards? I think we want to try to keep it as simple as possible, but we just have to kind of discuss what that process is going to be. How are we going to pick out?
Right. How are we going to evaluate and score the responses in a fair and efficient way?
Yes.
Okay, great. And how soon can we do this meeting?
Marissa's working on the RFP right now. I think, I'm going to discuss it with Patrice, whether we want to have it, because mainly it's the scoring criteria part that we wanted to discuss. So we could have it very soon, within like a week or two, probably.
Can you, well, we have to get everyone on the calendar.
Yeah.
So let's get a doodle or something going so we can get that CAP committee organized, so we get something scheduled. It probably won't be for at least 2 or 3 weeks, given people's busy schedules.
Right.
That's out now. That sounds good. And Jennifer just said that she wants to be on the committee starting in June, which we knew about, but it's a good reminder. So let's make sure that she's included in that as well. And
I missed that, Dave. What's the?
Oh, Jen wants to be part of that CAP committee. She can starting in June.
Yeah, I mean, or late, whatever, graduation is on the 23rd.
Well, that is, yeah, the CAP committee has been appointed by the chairman of the board of supervisors.
Oh, okay, so that's locked in
that's
place.
not up to us as
Okay.
a task force to appoint those people. That's up to the board of,
I forgot that.
But we could request that Jen be added. I'd be happy to take that on as a project.
Yeah, I suppose that's,
We should.
You want to do that, Brenda?
that
Yeah.
would be-
Possible,
that would be great.
I'd like to be involved if I can be. Thanks.
Yeah, we want to encourage people who want to lean in to be involved, and she's certainly done a lot with her students on the ag emissions work. I think that's going to be a very important part of what we do. So we'll get back to that in a minute.
I could check in with you afterwards for the talking points, but I'd be happy to take that on.
Thank you, Brenda. Brenda,
Yeah.
did you have another comment or question?
Well, I was trying to understand if the CAP committee is, in terms of the process, if Marissa is working on the RFP, is it ready to go to the CAP committee?
I think we probably want to wait until she's done with her final, get one more draft from her before we
Okay.
actually give it to the CAP committee.
And is it possible for one of the supervisors? I'd like to see the RFP as well, just to make sure that, I'm familiar with it and can
Yeah.
talk to the other supervisors about it. So could it be copied to the 2 supervisors on the task force as well, just so that we're in the loop and can answer questions either in caucus or?
As it is, or after Marissa's done with it?
I think when she's finished with it, we
Yeah.
don't,
Sure.
it really is more, I think we have less to add, but we can then at least explain it to our colleagues.
Yeah.
And prime the pump for its approval.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And then
so-
I was just going to say is if the CAP committee, let's assume all of this happens in May or early June, might we be able to get the RFP out in mid to end June? I'm looking for a timeline, basically.
Yes, I think so, Brenda. Yes, because one
And
of the
it's
things
usually out a month, right?
one of the things I did ask DEC was, because in their whole work plan, and this is kind of good news, is they don't really want to have that kickoff meeting with us and the CAP committee until after we've actually hired a consultant.
Right.
Oh, good.
We don't have to meet with them in person until the RFP process is done and we've actually hired a consultant. They want to see the RFP first before we send it out, but that sort of kickoff meeting, they prefer to just wait until we have the consultant hired.
So we wait on Melissa to finish the draft, then it gets sent to the CAP committee and it gets sent to Brenda and Denal as well. And then in the meantime, we can try to schedule that meeting, to have a meeting for us, the CAP committee, to discuss feedback Hopefully Jen can be included in that as well. Once the feedback is provided, then Melissa updates the RFP with any relevant changes, right? And then at that point, do we have to go back to DEC, or we can then?
As it gets sent to DEC for their review, and that's, you know, we're trying, we have attorneys in the county who are familiar with the things that DEC requires to be in the contract and the RFP. So we're kind of making sure that everything is in there. So hopefully it just goes through like once instead of back and forth and back and forth. So
I think with all that added process, we're probably not looking at having an RFP go out before July. I mean,
no, realistically.
and then it's usually out for what, a month, 6 weeks, Don? County contracts are out at least a month.
Yep.
So that would mean maybe you're doing your review and analysis in August. That's best case scenario, I think.
Probably. Yep.
September.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Couple more notes I have here. I'm going through my list here is, I know that we have the question out about whether the CAP committee has to adhere by open meetings laws. All right, so that's a big question that we have right now that we're asking County Attorney Rod Fitzsimmons and having that discussion. Because that means, if it is, that means all CAP committee meetings essentially have to be in person. We can't do them virtually.
Okay.
Who raised the question, Don?
Just folks that are working on the RFP, because that was one of the things we had in the RFP was having this, you know, like virtual public meetings that, you know, open to the public, and there's some questions about whether we can do that or not because of the open meetings requirements, that it be publicized and public can attend these meetings. And you know, the way it's been explained to me is, if we have like folks on if it's open meetings law requirements, then if any of the CAP committee folks attend virtually, then we have to publicize where they're signing in from. And it's possible that the public could attend their location at their home. You know, it gets into those kinds of details. So we are trying to, you know, confirm all of those aspects of the, you know, the CAP committee. You know, what are we beholden to this state open meetings laws or not? And that will be determined about how much virtual interaction we can have with each other and with the consultant and with the public. So that's a big item that we have to resolve as we move forward. I know Dave.
Are you talking to Rob Fitzsimmons about that?
Yes.
Okay. Because we have like 3 kinds of work groups, and the work groups typically are not held to open meeting standards.
Yep.
But I don't know if this task force is comparable to a committee or to a work group. That's what he has to decide.
That's what we're trying to find out.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it does seem illogical that our task force is not subject, or is it?
It's not.
Yeah, that's why we
Task
can
force
have
is not.
meetings. So it seems odd that the task force itself is not subject to the open, but there's somehow the CAP committee who's advising the Board of Supervisors in a similar way to the task force is. That seems very odd. And those are just simply selected as advisors, whereas we are kind of nominated to be part of this formal task force. It doesn't seem consistent. So I don't know the open meetings law. I'm not making an argument one way or the other. It just does seem odd. So
I think probably Marissa and Jim are just checking a box. So I think to solicit an opinion before you check the box would be a standard procedure. So I think Don's following through and doing the right thing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're just looking for the answer. It's going to be yes or no from the county attorney. So,
Yep. Okay, great. What else, Don?
Okay. Dave, you're not smiling. Oh, there you go. Okay.
I'm smiling.
Okay. Interviews with prospective consultants. Strongly discouraged. Okay. For a number of reasons. The length of time that it would add to the process, and really the effectiveness of such a interview. Because the way the interviews have to be handled is they cannot be conversational, right? The CAP committee, if the CAP committee wants to interview, say selects the top 3 consultants, we have to have written questions beforehand, exactly what we want to ask the consultants. We have to ask all of the same questions. We cannot deviate from them. We cannot answer questions from the consultant. All right. This is just us asking them questions. And it's really pretty cut and dry that's the process that we would have to follow. And the fact that would add a significant amount of time before we could actually hire consultants. So, it's that this was a large discussion we had with myself, Patrice, and Marissa at purchasing, and that's so I don't think we are including the interview process in our RFP. Okay.
Well, can we discuss that? Like the CAP committee may have an opinion on that. I personally think, but if we're going to spend $90,000 or $120,000 on a consultant, I'd like to.
We can ask clarifying questions after we get the RFPs back. We can ask clarifying questions to the consultants in writing. Again,
right.
So,
but what you're saying is
be,
there's no prohibition on us having a meeting in person with them, as long as we're consistent in the questions we're asking. We don't answer questions from them. We ask them all the same questions. I think as part of a review, there's nothing that prohibits it. It's just you're advising against it at this point, right? We could, if the CAP committee felt strongly about doing this and followed those guidelines, then we would be permitted to do it, I would imagine, right?
I think Don is saying that what he's hearing from the purchasing department is their strong recommendation that we not follow that path. That's what I heard you say.
We would get the same information from the consultants by just providing them with those questions in writing, and they can email those questions back to us, rather than trying to schedule in-person meetings where we're just asking them the same questions anyway, right? That's
okay. You feel strongly
about questions,
that.
yes, but
that's fine.
Right.
But
So
I mean, there's something to be said about talking with people and hearing their answers as opposed to having them written. But I hear you. That's fine. Jennifer?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can just submit a list of questions to everyone and not do it in person. But given that the focus of the CAP process is going to be so strongly toward having the consultant have expertise in the land use component, and that's not super common, it seems like it might be hard for us to make judgments without really drilling into some information, getting better information about what they do. And maybe we can do that in writing to accommodate what your recommendation is. But if it was up to me, I'd lobby for setting up 3 meetings and doing it.
I've been at these kinds of interviews before, and it's actually kind of off-putting to the consultant, because you're sitting there and the people who are interviewing are just acting like robots, sort of asking, here's my question, here's my, and they're just asking you questions, and there's like no response to any of your questions. And it's an odd experience. I've been through those interviews myself.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's move on for now. We are getting this strong advice to not do this, and Jamie, you're next. Go ahead, Jamie.
So from my understanding, in public procurement processes, you can respond, you just have to respond to everyone. So I agree that it's totally helpful to have everything in writing, but as long as the questions, any single question from a contractor is provided in writing and answered in writing to every other candidate or contractor, I think that's fine and straightforward.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, so-
process.
Yeah, I don't think that should be such a,
Yeah, that is actually before we actually, that's sort of pre-interview process. There is a clause in the contract, in the timing of the responding to the RFP, that the consultants have an opportunity to ask us questions, ask us clarifying questions. We publish those clarifying questions to all of the respondents so they know that what
Right.
everybody else is asking, and we respond to everyone that has
Yeah.
submitted a proposal.
it's actually
too, for
very
that.
helpful, right?
Right.
It's like a learning process. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
But
right,
even
let's,
after, yeah. So after that happens, after we've chosen sort of our top tier consultants, we can then go and ask additional clarifying questions to them too. But they're done asking their questions. So that's
Yeah. That's fine,
And
as long
it
as
is-
they have a chance to ask questions. Let's let the CAP committee receive this RFP, which describes this process, and go through it, and we'll go from there. It sounds like, you know, obviously this is a process that is followed throughout many of these similar types of contracts. Oh, Don, anything else?
Yes, list of consultants. We can send the RFP directly to consultants that we want to have received the RFP. So I have a few consultants in mind, some that I've heard that have done good work for other counties on CAPS. And
Great.
there's also like NWB, minority women-owned business list that we have to refer to and pick out a list from there. But if any of you have some consultants in mind that we should send the RFP to, we can do that. But it has to go through. It can't go through you. Okay, it has to go through the county. So if you have someone in mind, just send that person the name, email address, or however we want to contact them to me, and I will forward it on to Marissa, and she will make sure that RFP gets sent to that
Great.
person or firm.
Great.
Okay.
Good.
All right. So So if you have suggestions, send them to me. But from this point forward, everything has to go through
Yep.
Marissa.
Got it.
Okay, so there's no contact. If you have a consultant contact you and ask you about it, don't answer. Send that question, forward that question. Say, either tell them to contact us directly, or you can forward the question to us, and we will send it through Marissa, and she will. So it has to go through those. That whole
Yep. Don, we have a question from Jamie in the chat. Does the RFP for the county cap include municipal level plans? In other words, will individual municipalities be able to contribute and extract individual plans, updates to plans? I don't know what's actually currently written. The broad, and Don can answer that, but the broad idea was this would be a county level cap, but we would work to figure out ways to share information and, of course, try to collaborate.
This is not like it's not like the CARP where we had county plan and then we had 19 other municipal plans along with it. This is just a county government operations and a community level action plan. So the towns and villages in the city can probably extract some information from what we put out, but it's really just a county plan that we're working on right now.
Yeah. Brenda.
So I'm sorry, my memory is faulty. Do we know how many towns have CAP plans? And will that information be available as a resource for whatever consultant we hire?
It's been a while since I looked up. There are a couple, 2 or 3 at last I looked, that were government operations
Okay.
caps. I don't think anyone else in the
I
county
can
has
talk
done it.
about that.
Yep. Okay, there you go, Tara.
Tara?
As far as be any lighting climate action plans. I don't believe there are any. I think New Lebanon was maybe working on one, but there are about 5 government climate action plans that exist.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tara. Okay, Don, anything else on the cap?
That's all my notes on the cap right now.
Great. Anything else from
Plenty to mull over.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for all the heavy lifting. A lot of details in that process that, we don't all aren't seeing, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So thanks for all that work, Don, and making sure it's done to the letter of the law. So we'll reach out and try to schedule something for the CAP committee, just so we get something on the calendar, assuming that the RFP will be ready by that date. And then also, thanks to Brenda, we'll make a request for Jennifer to join the CAP committee. And of course, all of this will be shared and updated to the task force. The activities that are going on like this right now will continue to share with everyone and be as transparent as possible to get through this process quickly, so we can get someone hired and we can start this broader process where we all can lean in and volunteer and participate in different aspects of public outreach, review, that type of thing. So there'll be plenty for us to do. Thanks, Don. Anything else? Anyone?
Yeah, there's one mention for Brenda. If you're going to talk to, I assume, Supervisor Morell, there was also a blank for the health department that he did not appoint someone at that position because she was out on maternity leave. So if you're talking about adding Jen, you might want to mention that too. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Don. Thank you, Brenda. Okay, so next on the agenda, we had Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. It's come, it's gone, but isn't every day Earth Day? We're still out there. It was, we had the film fest I thought it was great. I know some of you were there. We could always use more people, but I mean, we had, I don't know, 80 people or so. Is that right, Don?
A lot, yeah. It was
about 80, which was
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah, about 75, 80 folks total. Yep.
The panel was great, as always. I mean, they're just rock stars. The folks we had there are just terrific. And it was a good discussion and Q&A afterwards, I thought. It was a rainy day. I was hoping for more people, but we can always build on this. And there is, one discussion that came out after. I was talking to a friend who is himself a kind of documentary filmmaker and an environmentalist, and he was talking about the Columbia County Film Festival, right? Happens in the fall. And maybe there's a way that we can align ourselves so that there's more of an environmental focus, or part of that has an environmental focus, and we can work together on that. So there's, building on an existing institution or event rather than trying to create a new one. And then the other comment that he had is reviewing, he gains access, I guess, online to all of the film festivals like Sundance and others, and you can get access to the films, I think, after the fact. But these are, pretty cutting edge, just released. And his thought was, well, we could probably scan through and find, really interesting content. This year was good. We had a couple local films. That was great, but maybe we could do something more robust. So those were interesting conversations that came out of this afterwards. And anything else on that? The tree planting, and there have been a variety of tree plantings. So there was the one that Soil and Water, the bald and burlap trees that were donated from Soil and Water. I don't know if Dylan's on, but I did hear anecdotally from various people that these trees got planted, and it was a good experience. I don't know if anyone wants to share. Betsy, you're always planting
we had a
trees.
beautiful northern red oak, lovely, probably a 10-foot tall tree. It was really nice, really great. We planted outside town hall. Just a few of us from the Climate Smart Committee. We didn't have a big pomp and circumstance, but it was a nice thing, and we're really happy we have it. And if Dylan was there, I'd say, Dylan, thanks a lot. It was a really nice thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, glad you received the tree. Everything went well on our end, and we did receive some photos and updates from municipalities. So yeah, thank you for participating.
Dylan, I sent you a picture, right? From Taconic?
Yes, you did. Thank
Great.
you.
Matthew.
Hi, y'all. Yeah, we had a great event here in Germantown, and we had a beautiful day for it, and we encourage everyone to come check out. We have a new patch of forest that the town now owns, 23 acres of new forest land, full of invasives, of course. So I'm sure we'll have a work day of some kind, but yeah, I encourage everyone to come by. It's outside behind the parsonage, which is our historical house that we have in town. The Theodore Robinson Forest is now open for the public.
Open for invasive clearing.
Oh, yes, open for that. The nature walk was Troy. This was every invasive you could think of. So lots of work, but
That's cool. That's where it starts. That's great.
Yeah.
Catherine, you're muted.
Yes, with Dylan's help, we planted actually 6 trees in Stuyvesant. The town paid for 5, and Dylan donated 1, and we had 12 people turn out, and they're service berries, and they look great. They're at the Veterans Memorial at Town Hall.
Nice. Fantastic. Jen.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Dave also for all the contributions you made from the planting material from Arthur's Point. We planted about 45 things, so trees and shrubs, and at the park in Claremont. And we didn't have a great turnout in terms of volunteers, but we got it done, which was good. And I was wondering, Dawn, if you, I mean, it would be nice to have everyone who had an event maybe just say how many things got planted, so we have a record of, I don't mean now, but send to Dawn maybe just a count, so that we can say, you know, that we helped make this happen, because it seems like I know a lot of people took advantage of David's offer to give plant material from Arthur's Point. So there's probably a lot of things got planted over those 2 weekends. So
Yeah, I know Laura Canamella in Valatia also did a community planting there, similar to, and she sent some pictures. I guess she's not on, but so that there are a few examples of that.
yeah, I'm working on gathering pictures. I haven't quite completed it yet, but I'll send them to you and Dawn when I get
Nice,
them.
nice, great. Tom.
Yes, so we had a planting of an Amelanchier in Philmont, Serviceberry, beautiful tree. We had a great cooperation from the DPW that is shared between Claverack and Philmont. So we had quite a considerable attendance. I sent the photos to Dylan. And I think maybe we'll get the award for who traveled the longest, the furthest to get to this event. We happen to have a house guest who is a climate attorney, and he came in from Patagonia.
We won't talk about the green footprint.
I don't know how he got to Philmont. I didn't ask him.
By boat, right?
Yeah, by kayak, sea kayak.
Right. And how many trees do you have to plant to offset that? Betsy.
Yeah, you know, David, I forgot to give you a shout out as well. We also got a number of gorgeous trees from you. We got a lot of them put in at the community forest on Saturday on our, community volunteer day. I also got a few lovelies from my house. Thank you so much. And you got your red bin back.
I got the red bin back. I
Great.
did.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your help and for those trees. That was really great to have. Thanks. Just
Yeah, it was great that it worked out. We had all those hands to dig holes and get them in. So I'm glad it was a good thing to build on. It was more than last year for sure, and I think we'll just continue with this momentum next spring. Another tree planting. Great. Well, that is terrific. And we've gotten some nice, cool wet weather, moderate spring to help everything kind of adjust and transplant. All right, countywide climate meeting. Don sent out a little separate kind of document summarizing kind of where we're at with the discussion. Thank you for doing that, Don. And we're still talking about location, agenda, kind of what this will look like before we actually get into the planning. It's more of the concept. There were location, I think we're Columbia Green is a possibility. Basilica may be a possibility, although I didn't hear back the last time I reached out to those guys. And someone mentioned Suarez Brewery as well. Don, remind me, if the county is involved in this, it cannot be at a place that serves any alcohol. So Suarez wouldn't work, right?
Well, I'm not familiar with what's. I think was it Jen? Did you mention Suarez or someone else? I don't know if they had a set. Oh, Betsy, if they have was that a separate building from the brewery or something that they?
Well, they have a tap room where they serve alcohol, and they offer their space, which houses the brewery. So I don't know exactly how fine you want to.
I mean, I just know that county attorney would really rather not get too close to that. And the other thing is that I know David was thinking about something like an after party maybe. So I think timing of the event we would have to discuss. So maybe if we have it at Columbia Green at a certain time, and then just like outside of this task force, kind of have a discussion. Well, some of us are going to go meet at the Union Brewery in Hudson or something for a little get together, totally separate from what we're doing. As long as that discussion happens outside of, I can't stop you all from talking about where you're going to go have a beer after.
Can we like grab you and drag you there? And I guess we will. I think that's kind of what we're thinking is maybe Columbia Green is the best place to do this. And
it just make it easier for me, because they have the infrastructure, they have the room, tables, chairs.
Oh, it's great.
There's no, I've talked a little bit with Patrice, and there's usually no fee for like training sessions we have, or no insurance requirements that they've had in the past, which was always a huge burden when we had the climate carnivals. So Columbia Green is real. I mean, that's my preference.
Well, that makes sense.
A lot easier on me. So let's
make it easier on Don. Do you have a contact there that you can reach out, and maybe we can find some dates? I mean, are we thinking a Sunday like mid-afternoon kind of thing? Is that the thought here? What are folks in October, early November?
Yep. Well, we have to date for the venue. Also thinking about speakers.
Right.
Yeah.
If we do want to have sort of a big name speaker, their schedule has to be taken into account. So on the note, I left it as 2026, 2027, because if the fall doesn't work out, then maybe January, February would be okay. We don't want to put off too long, but sometimes things take a lot longer to organize than we anticipate. So
I think if we can get a good speaker and we end up, not getting it done before the kind of holiday season, then let's take advantage of having a great event and putting our effort into planning it correctly. Brenda.
So I want to make sure that that I understand correctly. This is not an event for the public per se. This is for all of the town climate committees, and it's for our larger cohort, our larger group, right?
That's what I was leaning towards. That's my personal preference, but we had that discussion last month about which way would go. I mean, I'm open to either.
Do you know why I'm asking, Don? Because remember, we have a county climate panel that has done the last two public meetings. So if this is outside of the cohort group or outside of the town task force, if it's a larger public event, we may have to bring in that other committee.
Right. That's another.
That's
Well,
just keeping it.
remember 5 years ago, we did one event that was at Basilica that was in person, and then we did another event during COVID that was virtual. And and there were many people that attended, but it was really climate smart, clean energy communities,
Right.
CACs. It was people who are, you know, kind of volunteering to be actively involved in their towns or the municipality in these various efforts. So if we don't want to exclude people, we want to include people, but it's not like, are you curious about climate? You want to come and give your opinion or hear some speakers. That's not what we're like the Holly
Okay.
Tanner meetings. That's not what we're thinking.
Right. Well, that's what I'm trying to fold in or differentiate. What are the other? So, but I think what I'm hearing is that it's not the one we did at the college, which was for the broader public, an educational event. This is really
Right,
more
yes.
like a professional, or it's people that have a shared interest that are coming together as a community to discuss these issues.
Yeah. Climate smart, you know, we can even list it out. I mean, maybe we have a catch-all at the end, but climate smart, clean energy, advisory, conservation advisory councils, and other similar municipal environmental organizations or something
Right.
like that.
Right.
And hopefully that allows us to, you know, organize this thing without getting it, you know,
Too complicated.
too complicated, right? So I think, Don, who were the three? I mean, Bill McKibben, that's a long shot. That was one of the speakers that was mentioned. And for this type of event, that's not a community event. Maybe that's not even the best approach, and again, unlikely. But who are the other? The president of the Hudson River Foundation. I have to say I don't know who that is, but sounds. I mean, I read his CV. He's impressive, obviously. And there was one other person that you mentioned in your trying to pull it up.
Yeah, Naomi Oreskes. That was written in the chat, and I don't remember who put her name in there.
Betsy did.
Betsy. Okay. I just put those down because those are the three that came up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
We could probably use some more.
Yeah, Naomi
suggestions.
Oreskes is pretty famous, and she might cost, I don't know if she'd do it for free.
Yeah.
I dropped the ball. I did inquire from Eben Goodstein, our director at the Center for Environmental Policy, and he had an idea of someone that I'd never heard of that I need to follow up on. And I don't know, she just wrote a book and it's some kind of inspirational thing. And I thought, I don't know if that's really the direction we wanted to go in, but whatever, I can check her out a little bit if that's useful.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody just and Jamie just typed in Amy Davidson with a link. I'll add her to the list too. So, and
Yeah, she would be a great speaker. She's spoken at TED Talks, and she's spoken all over the world. And I think what's interesting about her perspective is that she lives locally. She's a kind of a, I don't know what you call it, at-home naturalist, but also a local environmental advocate, and works on policy for governments all over the world, governments and corporations. So it might attract a different group of people to the event, rather than just focusing on, ecologists or something like that.
okay. So yeah, I'll also mention one of the other time-consuming tasks with the carnivals was costs and funding, and just keeping track of that. So if we have a speaker that's going to cost us money, that's a consideration. We would need some kind of sponsorship, and again, someone either finding a sponsor that would just kind of pay directly for that speaker, or otherwise we would have to set up again some kind of funding mechanism, someone to bring in contributions and then disperse those funds like we had the CEDC do at the last carnival. And also food, which was also mentioned as an important thing to have. That's going to add some cost too. So again, it'd be nice to have if we can find a sponsor to possibly just directly pay for food and drink, or again, we would have to set up that whole, that fiscal sponsor
Yeah.
to handle the donations and dole out the money again.
In the past, I know what CDC did it, and then I think CLC the first year
Yeah.
did that role. People donated to CLC for the Climate Carnival, and maybe we could do something similar to that. I don't think it has to be an exorbitant amount. I don't know how much a speaker is going to cost, and hopefully we can get someone for free. But some food, I think, would be important. So I don't know if Terrence is on. We can get back to that. It is important. I agree. And let's
definitely as the planning goes on, let me know, and we'll loop me into all of that, please.
Great. Thanks, Terrence.
We might also be able to approach a local community foundation for funding for this if we have a budget. So, and like you, David, I have no idea what speaker fees are these days. So that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
To know.
Yeah. Betsy?
I just wanted to mention that Naomi Oreskes, she recently, last year purchased a home in Taconic. Her husband is recent member of our Climate Smart Task Force or Climate Smart Committee. So I was thinking maybe I could appeal to her, neighbor to neighbor kind of thing. I've never met her. I don't know how compelling a speaker is. I don't really know much about her other than, she's fairly, she's quite well known. So, just maybe I could approach her somehow.
What's her, can you give us a quick kind of bio background?
Historian of science. She specializes in climate change. She's written a number of books, a lot about scientific disinformation that's out there, et cetera, et cetera. Her husband's a well-renowned hydrologist, something guy. I don't know a whole lot other than that they actually purchased a piece of property that's directly adjacent to the Taconic Community Forest.
And
he's a very nice guy.
What's that?
He is a very nice guy. I haven't met her.
Yeah.
But if somebody wanted me to pursue that, I would be happy to, put a feeler out.
Yeah, we'll get the list together, and maybe I can put together a little summary of who they are, and we can go from there.
So let's add Amy to the list, and then if there are other suggestions, please provide them to Don, and let's look at that closely in June, and maybe we can agree on kind of a priority list of who we'd ideally like, what the basic theme of the talk is that we envision, and then we can we can do some outreach to those folks, figure out whether they're interested, what they would cost, what their timing is, that type of thing, and move on down the list as needed. Someone else just add something? I saw something come up. Okay.
I just have one more thought. If we had more than one speaker, we might also be able to have a short panel, and maybe someone like Ralph Gardner, who has the short weekly thing on AMC, and who is kind of, he used to write for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. He can talk about just about anything. Maybe he would be, an interesting way to kind of combine different speakers in a short panel. And he's generally pretty open to things like that.
Yeah, or maybe he could be the interviewer or something of a speaker.
It's a good idea. All right. And then Don, maybe you could just open up a conversation with someone at Columbia Green. Just say we're thinking about this. We don't know timing yet, but this is the rough timing. We're thinking of maybe they have some feedback on, what dates or windows are open at this point, or other logistics. Okay. Do we need beyond like the auditorium that we do, and there's the outdoor space around it? Do we envision needing more space than that?
Well, there's a couple different auditoriums. There's one in the main building, I think, that we've had. There's also that the separate building that has an auditorium and then separate meeting rooms in it that we've had trainings at. So there are a couple of different spots
Okay.
on the campus that we can look at. And I get an idea of what they, number of people they hold and when they're available. I'll get that together.
Yeah, and the other concepts that are in Don's document that have been discussed are having breakout rooms that are more kind of like practical discussions on how to get things done in your town through the Climate Smart program, clean energy, other kind of practical from experienced people. And another, which would just be a general kind of mixer, people who are just kind of looking to get to know people. I don't know what that would look like and how that would be different than the post-party type of thing, which is all about that, just people getting to know each other. And then maybe rapid presentations, like smaller presentations from a variety of folks on what's happening around the region. And there were a few examples listed. I could imagine many more. That could be really interesting to add more content. So it's not just us saying, how do we get solar on our town hall? Although that's very important. Just more information on, what's happening around the region. If you have other ideas or any of those ideas you like or don't like and want to comment on them or add to them, then just email Don, please, and we'll capture that offline. If anyone has any burning thoughts now, by all means, chime in. Okay, great. That sounds like it's a good place to shift after Tom speaks.
Yeah, I'm just curious about one statement in the agenda, in the discussion for this event, that you don't want speakers that are antagonistic to a diversity of views. But can you explain that further?
Yeah, just, we have to be cognizant that we are, we're advised, well, this is kind of going to be focused on task force and CACs and EMC folks. We are advisors to a wider audience, and we don't want to sort of, the one reason I mentioned that, Tom, is because I think it was Bill McKibbin's when I went on and looked at his bio, and he's really billed as sort of an activist, and and I just think that may rub some people the wrong way, to be honest. I just want to keep this as inspiring, yes, but we're looking for solutions to the problems and not conflicts.
Well, you'll need to look at Naomi Oreskes' bio
maybe
also,
maybe we do,
because she's
I don't
quite
know.
quite candid about the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah.
So
it's
a difficult road you're trying to follow.
Yeah, I think it is difficult. I think we just try to focus on the getting speakers who can speak with credibility about the issues, and not try to get into screening at this point, whether they're appropriate or not. And we just stick with the facts, and stick with if like I remember there was a series of books that someone wrote like 30 years ago, Ross Gelbspan, on The Heat Is On was one of them, and it was exposing in the 90s all of the undercover campaigns, kind of like the tobacco industry of the fossil fuel industry, that was trying to sow doubt and confusion in the American public. And then it was very effective in the 90s when science was telling us that climate change was real. And then we kind of overcame that and felt like there was progress to just kind of follow the science and not try to cloud it with doubt and dubious kind of campaigns that were guised in science. And then he wrote a follow-up book like 10 years later. You know, it's like back on, you know, so I think we're all activists, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah,
It's not a bad word. And we're going to follow the science and we're going to say it like it is. But we're not trying to be provocative.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to keep our heads down and get the work done. And I think we can do that without.
We have
sitting
to get approval by the Board of Supervisors to have this event, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think no one's looking to have any controversy. We're talking about these various municipal bodies and all of the people in the communities who are spending their time volunteering to support these municipal efforts that help improve our communities, the resilience of the communities, save money, quite a bit of money being saved all across these communities from all the work being done and the efficiencies going into place. So there's nothing controversial in my mind about that. And the county is not, there's nothing unclear about the county's statements about climate change being real and about the need to do something about it. So I think if we just follow that and we don't get too caught up, I think we'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So anything else?
Don, tell me if I'm misstating this, but I think what we're trying to manage here is that this is not a political group or a PAC. You know, this is a group that represents not only the town, but the county at large. So we just have to be careful not to politicize it. To your point, David, if we follow the facts, we'll be in good shape. But this is, you know, this is not a polemic. This is not a political action group. We need to, you know, just bring information to the community, to those that are working in this field in the community.
Yeah, and primarily this event is as a learning experience for all of us. That's really what I look at it as.
Yeah, I mean, how do we get things done? That's kind of, at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for, to try to get things done. We can't control the macro political context. We can't control a lot of that stuff. That's not our role. That's not what we're trying to do. So let's just focus on that, and we'll carry forward. I think that's how we've been successful, by not making it controversial. That's how we've gotten to this point, and that's what we're going to continue doing. I mean, all good points, and I think we heard what you're saying, Tom, and I agree with the need to just kind of focus in on you know, getting things done.
Yeah. Can I just say, I mean, I have to deal with what you're talking about every time I present to the Board of Trustees. So I know exactly what you're talking about, but my guidance is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports. And if you keep up with those, they just issued another one. You see how timely what we're doing is. And in fact, that's 95% of global scientists. So I think we have to stay with that and use that as the guideline.
But no one is suggesting we are. That is the scientific basis that we rely on, and that what we're saying is we don't want to get into a political debate over that. We just want to follow that and see how it translates into local action to prioritize things that will help mitigate and adapt to these rapid changes. But you're absolutely right. The urgency is increasingly clear, and it's increasingly urgent that we act, which is why we're here. So, but we all base our, you know, that's what we say, follow the science, is what we're talking about, the IPCC and things, you know, bodies like that, reputable, peer-reviewed scientific bodies. Jen, do you want to say something else or no?
No, I just that, you know, I think the way we characterized it last time we talked is somebody to say, yeah, there's great things happening and we can do even more, as opposed to somebody who's going to give us the doom and gloom story, which we all know that story and it's really depressing. So, you know.
It's about action. Betsy, I know you got to go. We're going to move forward quickly. Thanks, Betsy, for your time. Next on the agenda is there's been some discussion of late about demand charges and EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure, as some towns are dealing with some issues around that, which are there was a charger that was installed in Ghent, a fast charger. I don't know if anyone knows about this. That's kind of part of the problem. Is it's hidden behind the town hall and it's not being used very much. It's being used, but it's being used at a level where the demand charges, which basically is the commercial charge, which is based on the highest peak use at any moment in a month, as opposed to what we're all used to in our residential charges, which is you pay for the kilowatt hours used. This is different, and you're penalized basically if you have peak charges that are very high, but very few of them, and you're not being able to charge. You're not getting a lot of kilowatt hours used throughout the month to even it out, where you can charge the customer who's charging the amount of sorry, you can bill the customer who is charging their vehicles sufficiently to cover those demand charges, and the expenses have been higher than expected in Ghent, and they're trying to deal with that through NYSEG. And this was prompted by some research that's going on in Hillsdale that Jamie has been doing about a fast charger that they're trying to install there. Did I capture that fairly well?
Yeah, very, very, very well. I think the other kind of overarching context that is relevant to Ghent's problem and relevant to many municipalities that were early adopters of the level 3 chargers, the fast chargers, is that it looks like the Public Service Commission, I don't know if anyone's familiar with their announcement from March regarding Make Ready. So Make Ready, many of us get funding for fast chargers through CEC, NYSERDA, and then the actual kind of the other costs are covered by Make Ready. And that program was, I think, prematurely ended based on Public Service Commission's inquiry into data reporting. So what's happening in Ghent, we assume is demand, an issue related to demand charges, but I think that what the state is looking into is, whether or not these companies are actually reporting data properly, which could impact how they're charging municipalities for electric. And so I imagine if the Public Service Commission is involved, it may be something related to fraudulent reporting. The report doesn't say that explicitly yet, but they have basically put Make Ready funding on hold for at least 90 days in order to receive reports from these data sources. And I think that's what we should be watching very closely, because it could have, I'm not familiar with these processes at all, but I imagine it could have regulatory impacts, maybe to protect consumers, but also it may increase the costs of some of these systems. We're not sure.
And I don't know if this is the same as what you've said, because I'm still trying to digest what you said, but I know that our town was an early adopter for EV chargers. In fact, we've replaced our original ones with more efficient ones. And I think at the time that we put the chargers in, we had data that suggested that these would be budget neutral, that the town would not be paying for consumers to use the chargers. And that has not proven to be the case. So the level 2, many towns are evaluating whether or not they can continue to offer level 2 charges. Now the one in Ghent, the high speed one, is a level 3 charger. And I think I'm talking about hundreds of dollars a month in differences, but that level 3 is thousands of dollars a month in differences.
Yeah, a 3 or 4 port level 3 charger, a single charge can cost $3,500. So,
right.
So yeah, so I think, when NYSERDA offered this as part of CEC and other incentives like Make Ready, I think that municipalities weren't really prepared properly for understanding how technical it is actually. I mean, you really have to, as part of your RFP, conduct a feasibility study. There has to be a pretty robust ROI analysis, some kind of risk, financial exposure assessment. All these things are kind of above the, pardon my French, but like pay grade of many municipal employees. And so it has to be part of the RFP process and an expectation of the installer. And obviously the installer, they have their own private incentives. And, I think in the case of Hillsdale, for instance, there was a few issues, but basically our supervisor, we worked to get the grant. We did basic feasibility studies in advance. And then the supervisor took over like the contract granting process, and Linkwell solicited him and said, you need a 350 kilowatt hour 4-part charger. And that's not what we had spec'd as part of our feasibility for the initial NYSERDA grant. So it was like, we were presented with this contract that was like $500,000 exposure to the town, which, like, for any of us who actually knew what, like, remotely what was going on, we're like, no, that's not what we had anticipated. That would never make sense in our ROI analysis. But the town board actually voted an email and tried to push this contract. I was eventually able to red flag and have them rescind the contract. But what these suppliers did is they used the Public Service Commission's deadline to push people into these kind of ridiculous contracts, saying like, oh, the deadline's April 22nd, the the Make Ready is never going to offer this funding again. Like, you're never going to be able to implement this project. You're going to lose the NYSERDA funding. And it was really, I called it out in public meetings. I said, this is a fictional deadline, because it's an inquiry. It's like a moratorium on the program and the data. So I think we just have to, now we're focused on making sure we can extend our first contract deadline for the NYSERDA contract and make sure that we're still on path. It's not completely sabotage. We can still get into contract and follow a real RFP process, not in violation of our local procurement law and open meetings law.
Right. Yeah,
I would just say this sounds so different from the process that our town followed in terms of its scale and scope, and in terms of the cost that you describe. I mean, I'm really shocked to hear what you're saying. But I know that our town made decisions based on, we wanted to encourage the acquisition of electric vehicles in our community. We wanted to support that. But we also wanted to support economic development, because a lot of people were coming from either Boston or New York, staying in the area for the summer and for skiing, and they needed places to charge their vehicles. So we looked at it from an economic point of view, but also from an environmental point of view. But we did it at a much lower scale. Even at a lower scale, though, I think what the towns are struggling with are demand charges. And the fact that we've talked with anybody who would listen since this started, that we are increasing the need for electricity, for an expanded or an upgraded electrical grid, which is not occurring. And I think that is, that's a piece of the puzzle that has to be considered. And I do think that certainly Mike, your supervisor, Craig Simmons, David, your supervisor, a couple of others of us are looking at a bill, a resolution to go to state government and others, in either in May or in June about this, about these charges. And so if you want to share with us afterwards, that's fine. But there is another way. There's a lower not everybody joined Make Ready and has the Make Ready issues. I mean, many people looked at that and said that's not for us.
Yeah.
So I think the problem is more common and even at a smaller scale.
But I think in the feasibility study, there's two relevant tracks. There's level 2 track, which is what we call maintenance charging, or like, people who shop at big box stores 2 or 3 hours at a time, or park in their office parking lot. I mean, that's appropriate for level 2. If you really want to attract people to your community that wouldn't ordinarily drive to your community, you're really only talking about level 3. I mean, I drive a Tesla. I would only use a level 3 charger. I'm not topping up, I'm charging within the system. My car is smart enough to figure it out for me. So I think, and even that, most Tesla owners will only use superchargers. So all of those inputs need to be part of a feasibility study, before even going into, an initial feasibility study, but then an actual feasibility study through an RFP process. I mean, we'll see if these charges or data reporting is fraudulent or unfair, but I think the other part is that there isn't sophisticated procurement on a municipal level in New York State generally, so we don't have those resources.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really interesting discussion. I'm going to definitely get to everyone. One thing I wanted to add is, and some folks I think remember this, a couple of years ago, we worked on mapping, and that was a baseline for the county to say, here are the hot spots, because level 3 is, you can bring people places, but they're not going to go everywhere. And the 3 criteria that we looked at in the mapping that Don did were where do we have power on the grid sufficient for where it can be installed easily to create level 3 charging. That's it's already there, the amount of voltage that's on the line, how much annual traffic flows through, or daily traffic flows through those towns, and are there enough kind of local amenities that it makes sense for it to be a destination. I mean, the level 3 charging that I've done and that I do is almost always at a supermarket or at some place where you have a reason to spend a half hour or 45 minutes to get a full charge. And it's not clear that many of the places throughout the county will satisfy those three kind of criteria broadly. And so that mapping, I think, was very useful. It's still available. And in that process, we identified what we thought were the hotspots, or the biggest potential spots for level 3. And we actually started conversations with some of those folks. I would hope that any town that's trying to do something and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars would look at that closely beforehand. I don't think, I'm not sure that factored into Ghent's decision to put a level 3 charger behind its town hall there. I don't know how many people are coming off the Taconic to charge there. I think that's part of the problem. So, I'm just making this point because all of these details about costs and about whether there's some fraud or some data problems are all important, but fundamentally level 3 require that you're going to have it in a sweet spot. And many of the places around, just because we want to have them there doesn't mean it's actually a suitable spot. Tom, you want to add something?
Yes, I just want to add the Philmont experience with this, and it started with your map, and it pinpointed the Cumberland Farms in Philmont as being an ideal location for a level 3 charger. So I engaged the sustainability director at the Cumberland Farms. As most of you know, Cumberland Farms is now owned by an international conglomerate that's headquartered in London. So we went through all those different levels. We had conversations going on for a year and a half. With our last offer was the program that Jamie's talking about, where we would bring $100,000 in towards the installation and have a public-private partnership agreement. They turned that down. The reason is because until the utilities work out time of day charging, this isn't going to go anywhere. So the same way you pay 3 times the amount for an Uber at rush hour than at 2 o'clock in the morning, until those charges have time of day charging, that it's just not gonna get resolved. So that's where it ended. And so Philmont still has the level 2 charger, and that's where we're going for the moment.
Don.
Yeah, I would agree that, I mean, even with our ideal locations that we identified, this fact that there's this huge demand charge for the highest 15 minutes of, use is still, just kind of blows it out of the water. I mean, it's just, I don't know if either of those ideal locations would have enough usage to overcome that. Second thing is, and I don't know if you've talked about this, Jamie or Tom or anyone else, but I've gotten some feedback about locating batteries at these level 3 DC fast chargers in order to sort of smooth out that peak demand where the battery is charged at a slower rate than what a fast charger would draw. So you're charging the battery at a lower level. You don't get that huge 15-minute spike in usage. And then the charger actually draws power off the battery instead of directly from the grid. So that kind of smooths out it lowers that peak in demand charges. I've gotten that answer from a couple of folks. Just putting it out there in case anybody wants to follow up with that with your projects.
A number of the vendors have offered that. So that was also part of our initial feasibility.
Brenda?
I was just going to go back to your mapping conversation, which I think we identified only 4, maybe 5 locations in the county. And we were thinking that this is what would make sense to have regional coverage in the county. And I think this would be an area where we could work as a community as opposed to individual towns, to make that happen. The other thing I wanted to say is the reason Craig Simmons was so interested in getting a level 3 in Ghent was because he owns or is related to a towing company, and in the winter they were pulling all of these cars off of the Taconic Parkway, at Friday nights, 10, 11, 12, 1 in the morning, that ran out of power just below Hillsdale. Apparently there's a big hill on the Taconic, and they couldn't, in cold weather, get from New York City to our area without a charge. So, and at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock on a Friday night in Columbia County, there's no restaurant that's open. It's hard to find a hotel. So he really was trying to meet a public service need by putting a level 3 charger in at Ghent. He really felt that would be helpful not only to his local community, but to the number of people that they were pulling off the parkway in the dark on Friday night.
That was exactly the plug that we used to the Cumberland Farms, because there was also a tow driver local to the Cumberland Farms, and that's exactly why we engaged them. The Cumberland Farms also said their big profit margin is off the junk food they sell in that 15 minutes. Not the charger, not the gas, it's the junk food. So, and particularly on their American market, that's where their profits are. So it's it's still a perfect location, but it's time of day charging that's still not resolved.
Well, and we are in Canaan. We're talking to the Loves here is which is at B3, which does have the traffic, does have the local amenities. They're rolling them out every they had a battery storage model. So every so many miles on I-90, they were going to roll them out in their various stations. but they're tied to federal funding because they were rolling out 6 at the same time. So we'll see if that ever comes back around again. But then also the grid would not support. They wanted to roll out 6 level 3s or sets of level 3s, and the grid would not support rolling out that number of units. So I think we have to still circle back. There's a real advocacy role here to talking to our other electeds about how do we get an expanded or updated power grid, because we're creating a need. There is a need. There's a market, but there's a gap in capacity. I think that's really at the heart of this, is the capacity.
Yeah, and it's broad policy, build it and they will come. And that was part of Tesla's model that was successful. Is we know that range anxiety is the big issue here. For broad adoption, we're going to invest in our own network, and they did it, and it made a huge difference in terms of people's perceptions of what's possible. And that for non-Tesla drivers, although Teslas are now open, the superchargers are open to more and more vehicles, non-Teslas. That's been, a real challenge that hasn't been dealt with yet, as we're all talking about. And so the question is, it needs to be coordinated, and it needs to be coordinated in our county, but beyond that. And this requires state and federal funding and coordination. So it's hard to engineer that at the local level when those programs are cut and disappear. Not to mention the incentives for the cars themselves, but yeah. So Jamie, keep us updated on what's happening in Hillsdale. It's interesting. I mean, this is a note of caution. I think towns, when they're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably not going to jump into it. But the last thing we want to see happen is examples that prove the point that this doesn't make sense. And that may be what the cautionary tale is from Ghent. We don't know yet. And that would be unfortunate, both for Ghent and also for the broader efforts to do this in a kind of a rational way that worked for a broader community need, in the future. So good discussion. Anything else? All right. Thanks for bringing this up, Jamie. Appreciate it. It's important. Let's continue. And someone asked for the maps. So Don, maybe you can just set. I don't know whether they're static or they're interactive, but maybe you could just send out some PDFs of kind of our final.
Yeah, I'll send out the link again. It is an interactive map, and it's the grid information updates automatically, and the traffic information updates automatically.
The amenities you did.
Amenities, those are don't change too much.
Yeah.
So again, I'll just say, our priority areas, there's no guarantee that you're going to go overcome the demand charges just because we've identified those 5 places in the county. So
yeah, I think this idea of a detailed feasibility study to really evaluate return on investment is essential, and that wasn't really done in most cases, as far as I know, at the level 2 kind of charging level. When a lot of towns jumped in, there was a lot less at stake there, but still something. And that is unfortunate because the experience for some, they feel burned or they feel like it wasn't a good experience. That's not good for the broader cause. That's not going to meet the need. And at the level 3 level, the stakes are even higher. So, anyway, good discussion.
Just one point of clarification. Are demand charges and delivery charges the same? Or are they 2 different things? Okay.
No, delivery charge is like the breakout on the bill between supply and delivery. The infrastructure part of the kilowatt hour charge and the supply part are broken out separately. And then the demand charge is a commercial. It's an accounting for how they bill at a commercial facility.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Other updates. Parents, what do you got for us?
And yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on with CLC right now. So this past weekend, Betsy mentioned we had a planting at the Takana Community Forest. We have the grand opening on June 6th. We have a bunch of other events. If you go to our website, you can check those out. But coming up, we've got walks with Tom Wessels. We've got the beginning of our land camp series where people can get practical experience with land management techniques. And just like a kind of fun announcement is we're currently closing 2 DEC grants and we're jumping into another one. We've applied for a grant to create a second community forest up in Austerlitz. So with luck and with the grant, we're hoping to purchase 560 acres of woodland up off of Route 22 on West Hill Road and Dudway Road. And that's going to be kind of our next public land.
Wow. Good luck. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Tara, I think you may have had something on the last discussion.
I don't know. Actually, this is new.
Oh, okay.
And I apologize. I've been kind of in and out of cell reception. I'm in Lake Placid at a clean energy conference that they do in the North Country. So just 2 things. The first one is that we don't know any word about the CEC program yet. It should be any day though. So for those of you that are waiting on it, I don't know if this came up during the call and I missed it when I was not in a cell reception area, but we will let you guys know as soon as we hear something, and hopefully any day now. The second thing is that I am leaving CDRPC in a few weeks. So my last day will be the 22nd. I am going to the NEEP, which is the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, to manage their New England Heat Pump Accelerator Program, which is an EPA grant that they received. So new directions. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. But you won't be left without services. Haley Belkanoff, who I think most of you on this call know, who is doing a lot of the communities in the southern part of the county, is going to take over the full county support. So there'll be a lot of, just cohesion, I think, with that, just her being able to share resources and examples from all communities. And you guys are an active bunch, and you have been. So, so yeah, it's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure working with you all.
Tara, I mean,
Wow.
it sounds like a great opportunity, and congratulations. It's going to be, they're
Thank
lucky
you.
to have you. We've been lucky to have you for as long as we did, and all of the towns that you've helped. And I mean, a tremendous resource. You've made a huge impact. We can't thank you enough for always. I mean, look, you're here in your car from Lake Placid calling in. You always said yes. Anyone had a question, they needed help, and you were like, yeah, I can help. It was always yes. So thank you so much, and a great contribution to our region, that you've had, and we really appreciate it.
Of course, and stay in touch. I'll share out my my personal email with you folks. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'd love to hear from you all in the future. I'll still be in the same space, just kind of a different circle. So if you have needs about heat pumps or energy efficiency, I'll be in that world. So
Cool. All right. Well, we'll stay in touch. Thanks, Tara. Jen.
Super fast. I know we're out of time. Tomorrow at 10:30, me and my class will present the results of this final analysis that we did on the greenhouse gas inventory for Columbia County. We just added on livestock emissions using the tool that the CDRPC utilized for their regional analysis. And if anyone is interested in joining, I think David and Don will be there. It'll be super short and pretty informal, but we're just going to let you guys know what we found out. So if anybody's interested, email me and I can send you the Zoom link.
Yeah, very interested, very appreciative that you've done this work. And I looked at the addendum on the report, and it's very important to break this out. It's a huge part of our agricultural emissions that you're characterizing in more detail, which becomes more actionable. So it's really, really important stuff, and really we appreciate it. Looking forward to that tomorrow. And anyone that wants to join, please do. Dylan.
Oh, yeah. Hello. Yeah, just a quick update. We about and this ties into Jennifer's comment. So we did just receive an award from the Climate Resilient Farming Grant to implement cover crops on 5,000 acres of land in Columbia County over a 4-year period. And specifically, it's working with big producers, conventional producers, to shift the cover crop management from a single species like a rye to a multi-species cover crop that adds added soil health and like carbon sink benefits. So if anyone is interested in that data or information, I'd be happy to talk further about it. And also related to Jennifer's comment, I just wanted to to note that in a earlier round of CRF, we were awarded a project for a methane management system at a big dairy farm. So about half the dairy cattle in Columbia County, or maybe a third, all the methane emissions from that stored manure from those cattle are going to be eliminated from this project. And that's the stored manure, right? That's where a lot of those emissions come from. It's a very anaerobic condition. So just pointing out that, we are making these steps forward with addressing those kinds of agricultural emissions.
Cool.
Dylan,
Dylan, I want to be in touch with you.
yeah, totally. And also, is that a project that's in process of being implemented?
Yes. Yeah. So it's fully funded, fully planned. We're waiting for the final engineering drawings.
Wow.
We're working on
methane digester?
procurement. There's an anaerobic digester, so it includes processing all that methane and using it for energy production on the farm.
I was up at a livestock farm in Auburn that has, it's a big, I think it's 2,000 head of cattle, and Spruce Haven Farm. And they've got a methane digester and they feed right back into the grid with that.
Yep.
Is that how it's going to work?
I know they're going to use it for their, in-house energy production. What's left, if there's residual energy, I'm not sure if it goes to the grid.
Wow. And one last question. Well, let's talk about this after. We don't have to bore everyone with it, but
okay.
That's exciting. You said a third of the current livestock emissions from the county?
Yeah, about a third. We have like one dairy farm that stands out in terms of the number of milk cows, and that's where this project's being implemented. So it's probably about a quarter to a third of the milk cows in Columbia County.
This is great. I mean, we have a great case study for our, to talk about this. And I mean, it sounds like we could have a great case study to talk about this in terms of its impact, which is huge for that sector. So this is great. Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other updates from Clean Energy Hub or CCE? All right. I know we've gone long, and we typically don't go long, although we do allocate 2 hours. We never use 2 hours, but or we rarely do. Any other last-minute updates from around the horn? Feel free to use the email if you want to communicate with folks as well, or just send messages to me and Don, and we'll get them out. Thank you all for your time, and we will meet again in June and move forward on these things. You'll be hearing more about CAP, and if you want to join us tomorrow for Jennifer's students presentation, please do. Enjoy spring.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
There.
There
Can you
you
hear me
are.
now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 people here so far. I think people are coming in, so I'm checking.
Okay. We have like one dairy farm that stands out in terms of the number of milk cows, and that's where this project's being implemented. So it's probably about a quarter to a third of the milk cows. Okay. We have like one dairy farm that stands out in terms of the number of milk cows, and that's where this project's being